Testing, testing. Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing? My name is Juliana, and I'm DevRel at NodeOps. And today's live stream will be going through the Docker to Marketplace step-by-step guide. If you are new here, please say hi. This live stream is going through Twitter and YouTube. So from both of our platforms, you can come in and say hi. Leave us a message. You can type into the chat any questions you have. And why don't you let me know where you're watching this from? I'm streaming from New York, and today is 57 degrees Fahrenheit. It's just a little bit too chilly for me. I don't know what that is in Celsius. But whether you're watching this at the time of stream or after, leave us a message and let us know where you are. We'll love to connect with you. So yeah, let's get into it. If you are here today, you should know that there is a hackathon happening. It is the NodeOps DPIN virtual hackathon. It is happening from October 1st to October 31st. So we have about 10 more days left. If you want to check out the hackathon, the QR is right here. So just scan that, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the hackathon. And today we're going to go through how to win the hackathon. I'll go through tips, tricks, and ways to create the best submission possible. We'll also talk about the most common pitfalls that developers reach whenever they're submitting. And a more practical side is how to monetize your application. So we'll go through how to Dockerize your app and submit it to the marketplace. Okay, so let me bring you into my desktop. Okay, so if you scan the QR code, this is the hackathon we're looking at. The prize pool is 5,000 US dollars. It is ending in 10 days. So that's the last day for you to submit. We have 3 tracks. Let me take a look at this. We have 3 tracks and 5 places. So first place is 1,500, second place 1,000, third place 700, and there are platform credits on top of that too. Fourth and fifth place as well. The tracks we have are AI, DeFi, tooling, and OpenTrack. So what this tells you is you can apply for any of these tracks, and there's no particular ranking amongst the tracks. We just look for, the most important thing we look for is documentation. And I'll show you how to make the best documentation possible. But at the end of the day, whatever project, whatever track you're applying to, it's docs, docs, docs. All right, so that is the hackathon. If you are submitting today, if you have any troubles, any problems, go ahead and join our Discord. So that's our QR code on the top left. That's our Discord. Ask any questions. You can also leave a message in the chat of the stream, wherever you're seeing it, in Twitter or YouTube, and we'll respond to you. So that's the hackathon. Now we're going to talk about how to win it. So now we're looking at a Docker, a documentation file. Let me clip this mic to myself so I can free my hand and type. Perfect. All right, this is what we're going to go through today. The first thing we'll go through is, obviously, you know the hackathon, and you know the prize pool. You know that it's docs. We definitely require a good demo video for you to win. But now we're going to talk about like what that means. So first we're going to go through video format. What's the best way to do a demo? Then we're going to go through like the biggest pitfalls. And then, oh, is this big enough? There we go. For devs. And then we're going to go into the workshop. So the workshop is 2 parts. The first part is to Dockerize your app. Okay. And so to Dockerize your app, we're going to need to install Docker and generate access token. And then we're going to go open up a project. So you can use your project or my project. I'm going to give you an open source GitHub link to my project. And then we're going to run it locally on Docker. Okay. Then after we run it locally on Docker, then we're going to publish your Docker image publicly. So that's what we're going to do. And after we publish it globally, then we're going to submit it to the marketplace. Okay, right. All right, so let's get started. So these are the steps we're going to go through today. Let me keep this onto the left side. Okay, so we have a reference point of what we're doing today. Oops, where did it go? All right, let's go through the first step. So video formats. Video format, what we're looking for in the demo is you clicking through the template, the application you're submitting in. So for example, a very good video format is not actually you going through the code. That's not what we're looking for. What we're looking for is somebody who can demonstrate to people who use your app how to use it. So let me show you one of my templates right here. So for example, if this is your application and you've published it, a video app would be somebody walking through how to deploy your application and then coming to this URL and then showing them this is what you can do. You know, I can add a new task, like for example, eat lunch and delete and also rearrange. I can check them off and delete them as I needed. So I think that's a pretty good video. You can talk about the use cases, the description, but the most important thing is teaching your users how to use your app. That's the number one thing we look for in submissions. Let me make this smaller. Okay, the second thing we're going to talk about is the biggest pitfall for developers. The number one issue I see with devs building on NodeOps, is not building your Docker. Okay, is not building. All right, I think it's better to say forgetting to build their Docker image for AMD 64. Sorry, that's a little long. Okay. That's the number one issue I see with developers. If the DPIN infrastructure that we have now only works with AMD 64. By default, Docker builds for ARM 64, which is a completely different architecture. So I'm going to go through how to build your Docker image. I cannot reiterate this enough. This is the number one issue I always see. And it may be because, you know, people are just not reading documentations or skipping things too quickly because, you know, you can still build a Docker image successfully. You just forget to include this extra flag. So we'll go through the command line to build for AMD 64. So the application, your Docker image must be built for AMD 64 in order to be submitted to the NodeOps Hackathon. Number one pitfall. Okay. All right, any questions? Anyone has any questions, leave a message. Remember, even if you're watching this live stream after the fact, we'll still get to your questions. And you can also join our Discord, you know, QR code on the top left to ask whatever questions you need. You can also reach us directly. If you're a registrant or one of the hackers, you can ask us a question directly from this tab. I do answer DMs, so DMs are open. Also, if you follow me on Twitter, my handle is jnodeops. Also, DM me there, tweet me there. Okay, now we're going to get into Dockerizing your app. All right, so to Dockerize your app, you must have Docker. So we're going to download Docker. Oop, why am I doing all caps? Docker. Okay. So if you've never built a Docker container, before, you're going to need Docker. So you need to install it on your local machine. You can go in here and just install. I'm pretty sure this is pretty straightforward. You know, get started, install for your machine type. And then once you install it, you should be able to see here. It will look like this. So I'm going to open up my Docker to show you what that looks like. And while you're working with Docker, it must be open in the background. So I'm going to drag my Docker over to this window. So here we are. Here's my Docker running. This is running on my local machine. Now, once you have this installed, then we're going to have to generate an access token. This is important for later. You're going to go ahead and sign in. And then under your user account, this is mine, Juliana Peace, you're going to come into settings right here, settings. Click on this, come down to personal access token. And then you're going to come and click generate new token. And then give your token a name. So this is an access token. This is what's going to connect your terminal, your command line, to Docker. This is how you're going to be publishing your Docker images to your account. So give it a descriptive image, descriptive name. Let's call it like my cursor terminal. And then set the expiration to none. Up to you if you don't want to. And then optional, this access token must have minimum read and write privileges. So minimum this one. You can also do read, write, and delete. So minimum read and write. And then go ahead and click generate. Okay. So once you're up to this stage, this is your Docker password. Now that we've done this bit, okay, we've done step 4. Done. Now we're going to go into step 5. Open a project and run it locally on Docker. Now, if you don't have a project, I'm going to give you one, top left. Bam. So that QR code on the top left is a sample project. This is the one I'll be working off of. You can do it too. So I'm going to take you into my cursor. All right, so if you guys don't know what cursor is, it is like VS Code, except it has a built-in AI. So it's really awesome. I really like using it. So my project is here. You can go ahead and git clone this project. And now we're going to run it off of Docker. So assuming your project is working, everything's perfectly fine, you need to generate a Docker file for your project. For me, it's over here. So it's very simple. A Docker file is just a set of instructions. I think you're looking at like 40 lines here. And it's pretty human readable from the first line number 2, and there's like helpful, comments for it. It is the base of it. So I guess to give you some context, a Docker is containerized infrastructure. So you're packaging your application into a single container. And in order to create this container, you have to give it a set of instructions to build your application. So starting from the first line, you need a base. For me, it's like a node image. And then from there, I create the files, the working files, which is the folder, and then copying the packages, the files that I need, npm installing while inside. The only way I'm able to npm install is because I'm working off of a node base. So long story short, you can also use AI to generate a Docker file. Awesome shortcut. It's just to go into AI. Sometimes they do a great job. You should probably, in my experience, when I ask AI to generate Docker files, sometimes they like to include extra things that you don't need and make it more complicated than necessary. So make sure when you're asking for it to generate a Docker file for you to keep it simple. So as you can see, mine is relatively simple. There's nothing extra here. It just gives it instructions on how to install my app. Okay, so that's a Docker file. Now we're going to run it locally. Let me give you the command lines for that. All right. So going back to the Docker right here, we're up to this step. So running locally, there are some commands you may use. I'm going to share it right here. Docker build -t my app, period. You can copy and paste this directly into your cursor terminal, and this will run your app locally. If you have, oops, that's funky. All right, here we go. If you happen to have environment variables, most likely you do, you would use this command, which is very similar to the first one I showed you. The only difference is that you have a flag, --build arg, with the name of your environment variable and the value of it. And then you're going to pass in the rest as the same, -t my app, period. So these are the two commands to run it locally. This only builds it locally. To run it, you need this command. Docker run -p and then the port and the name of your application. So that's it. Let's show you what this looks like when you're running it. Let's go into my cursor again. And first step, I don't have any environment variables that are necessary. So I'm just going to take this command, docker build -t my app, period. My app is any name you give your application. It doesn't really matter. It's an internal alias to point to your application. Okay, so if your logs look like this, then it was successful. If it doesn't look like this, you may have to debug it. So this works. Now I'm going to run it. I'm going to type in docker run -p for port. I know my application is running on port 3000. I want to map it to port 3000 in my deployment. And I want to deploy my app, and I'm going to include the period for this current directory. Oops, I forgot. I don't need the period for this one. Okay, now if it looks like this, it was successful. So it says my application is running on my local network, port 3000. Let's take a look at it. Bam. So this is running entirely locally. It is in a Docker container. Awesome. Now comes the next part. How do we open this application to the public so that everybody in the world can take my Docker image and also run it on their infrastructure? So this is where we go into step 6. We're going to publish your Docker image. To publish, you're going to also need a couple of commands. Let me give you those right now. Okay, first thing you do is that you must log into the Docker command line. This was the generated access token that you're going to need here. And then you're going to build your Docker image with this command. So as we mentioned before, you must build with Linux AMD 64. So it's very important that you use this line. If you forget this flag, it will not work on our infrastructure. Okay, so let's put this into action. Let's go into cursor, and I'm going to exit my application so it's no longer running. And now we're going to log in to Docker. So for that, it's going to be docker login -u for username. My username is Juliana Peace. And that's it. Hit enter. And then it's going to ask for a password. This is not the password to your machine. This is going to be the generated personal access token that we created earlier. So let's go back to our token over here. I'm going to copy it. Okay, I copied. And I'm going to go back here, and then I'm going to paste. Now, on like Linux, Unix-based machines, you're not going to see anything. There's no reaction, but just trust that I definitely did paste it. So I'm going to hit enter. Okay, and my login has succeeded, which means my terminal, I'm able to connect to Docker from my terminal and publish my image. So now we're ready for the next step, which is this command. All right, there we go. Now we can type in docker build, just like before. We're going to build your template, -t, and this time you're going to give it your username, and then the slash, and then the name of your app. So previously I used my app, but this time, since this is a public-facing Docker image, I want to give it a more descriptive name. So let's try task manager app. It's kind of long, but task manager app. Next, I'm going to give it a tag. So : and then 0.1. Let's talk about the tag. So when you're building a Docker image, it usually you iterate. You publish a new version of your code, and there are versions, right? So you can tag those versions with some kind of nomenclature like 0.1, 0.2. It's up to you. Some people can use letters like A, B, etc. Normally, I think you can even use numbers, just a number 1. And the next time you push, you can do the number 2. So for me, 0.1 makes sense. This is important because as you're pointing people to your application, you want to make sure that they're like on the latest or on a specific version. It's useful. Next, I'm going to do the period for this current directory, and then I'm going to do -- push -- platform, and I'm going to type in Linux AMD 64. Again, I cannot reiterate this enough. You must build for Linux AMD 64. Any other architecture will not work on NodeOps. All right, that looks good to me. I'm going to hit enter. Oops, Linux / AMD 64. I missed that slash. All right, so while it's building, this may take a minute because it's building and publishing to the public. Let me talk about NodeOps and what we're doing here. After you publish your template and it's available to the public, the community can now take a copy of your template and you can place it into your community marketplace. So which means you can, anytime someone uses your application, you get 20% revenue. Also, you get to leverage the infrastructure of the DeepIn infrastructure. So very little downtime. You have built-in logs and analytics. And yeah, I think that's a great place to leverage your application. If you are building a really awesome app, I suggest you partner with us so we can do some co-marketing and bring attention to your application. We can do AMAs. We do live streams. We also do co-marketing material. If there's like an event we're doing, we can do a shout out. So partner with us to get some eyes on your application. But for the first part, now if you're participating in a hackathon, just submit an application that works and has great documentation. Okay, that was successful. We're now done. As of this point, this application should be public. Now I'm going to go into my Docker to check that it's there. All right, coming back to my profile, I'm going to click on Hub and Repositories. Okay, and there it is. That's my application, Juliana Peace Task Manager app, published 1 minute ago, and it is public. Great, congratulations. You have published your first Docker image publicly. Now, let's bring it into the NodeOps Marketplace. We're down to the last step, submitting to NodeOps Marketplace. So this is what we're going to go through. We're going to go through docs. Okay, and we'll talk about what that looks like. And then we're going to go through the YAML that you need to create in order to publish into NodeOps Marketplace. Under docs, there's a minimum character count, but in order to meet the minimum, I think sometimes it's a little difficult to write, so there is a markdown template to use. I'm going to share that in just a bit. Let me take you into cloud.nodeops.network. So from here, we're looking at cloud.nodeops.network, create your account, and then come into My Templates on the left. From here, you're going to click Create Template on the top right. And then there's going to be a 2-page form. Very simple. We're going to go through this together. What this form does, it turns your Docker image into a template that is now shareable. You can keep it private, so just the owner can deploy, and you can also make it public. so that it goes onto the community marketplace and starts earning revenue for you. Today, since it's a hackathon, it's okay if you just keep it private. I'll show you what that looks like, how to deploy your application and how to interact with it, how to share that URL, for the hackathon. All right, so back to the form. The first thing you're going to do is upload your template image. So that's kind of like your app thumbnail. I'm going to use this one. It's a very simple check mark. I think the simpler the image, the better. I think I clicked something wrong. Here we go. Upload image, done. Then I'm going to give my template a name. So we called it, what was it? Task Manager App. Okay. And then I'm going to give it a description. So the minimum is 100 characters. I've already written mine, so I'm going to copy and paste it. Yeah, very straightforward, 100 minimum. This is already 140 characters. For prerequisite, you don't need to do this unless you're building GPU templates. So we can toggle that off. Under category, I think I would categorize my app under automation, probably. And then for overview. So for overview, I suggest you follow this markdown. I'm going to copy and paste it. So overview. Oh, that's not formatted very nice. All right. So for overview, I suggest you follow this guideline. So template overview, provide a concise description of your template, purpose, key features, benefits, any requirements and any limitations. For that, for my application, this is what I'm going to use. I'm going to copy and paste it and bam, there it is. So overview, I'm going to make that bold. Requirements, bold. Limitation, bold. Everything here is formattable. So I think great docs look good too, not just contain great information. So formatting is important. Make sure it's readable. Yes, I've included a purpose, key feature, and benefits. So that's just very simple. And it's the minimum is 250 characters here. We're at 402. It's straight to the point. It's short. It's easy to read. So that's overview. And the last big chunk that you have to fill in is the use cases. Use cases, very simple. There's no suggested format to follow, but for me, I would suggest you follow this one. All right. So like this, use case 1, use case 2, and then describe your scenarios as they go down. So here is mine. I'm going to copy and paste it here. So very simple. Use case 1, student homework. Use case 2, freelancer. Use case 3, personal errands. So very easy to read, very nicely formatted. And that's it. That's it for the most part. Now we're going to move on to the rest of the links. Tutorial link is not a requirement for this form, but for the hackathon, this is required. So we're going to need a video demo of you using the application. So if you record it, you can paste the link here. You can publish it on YouTube or whatever shareable method you choose. GitHub link is also not required. Neither is Twitter or Telegram, but whatever you include is helpful. Now down to here, you can make your template private. As I said, if it's private, only the owner can deploy this template. For the hackathon, it is okay if you keep it private. If you wanted to take your app and place it in the marketplace so that it can start earning revenue, it has to be public. And then down here, you can also hide your YAML content. We had some issues where people were copying each other's YAMLs, and your YAML is going to expose your Docker account, like the precise address of your image. And so you can absolutely opt to hide it. So I'm going to hide mine. You can also save this as draft if you want to come back for it later. But I'm ready to keep going, so I'm going to hit next. Okay. Now we're at the final last bit, which is the YAML, this bit here. For the YAML, very simple. There is a sample YAML here. This is a sample. I think it should be a little more clear. So you can copy the whole thing. And I would rather not work from here because you have to edit this YAML to fit your use case. So I'm going to bring it into my cursor. I'm going to make a new file, call it marketplace.yaml, and then I'm going to paste it. All right, so I'm going to clear out my terminal so there's less noise. And then I'm going to show you this YAML. So this YAML is what gives the NodeApps infrastructure the instructions on how to deploy your application. So the most important thing, well, starting from line 2, is the version number. This, in theory, should match the tag that you use, like 0.1. 5 is, line 5 is the name of your services. You could have up to 5 services per YAML, which means you can run 5 images, Docker images simultaneously. For us, we only have 1 image. So line number 7 would be the name of your service. For me, that would be my app. And line number 9 is the address. My image is going to be, delete this. This is where your image is. For me, that's going to be Juliana Piece, and what do we call it? Task Manager app 0.1. Line number 12, I usually just set this to always. Line number 15 are any command lines you want running. For me, this is already built into my Docker file, so I don't need to customize any commands. Line 18 is any arguments, and then you would set your port. For me, my port is 3000. Okay. Protocol TCP expose true. True, this means the public can access this port. And then 27, this is where you would set your environment variables. I don't have any environment variables, but it would look like this. If you have an environment variable, give it a name. And then if you have a default, set the default here. If you don't, you should put it in little curly brackets over here. And then what this does is it will prompt the person who is deploying your application to include a value for it. Something like this, for example, would be a default environment variable, something that the user cannot change. Since I don't need this, I'm going to go ahead and delete this bit. Okay. Now we're down to resource usage. Resource is how much computational power and memory you think your application needs. By default, I think 200, 400 is pretty good. If you find that your app is crashing, you may need to update this variable a little bit more. Okay, so pretty painless. I think we're done here. Now I'm going to copy this entire file and bring it back into the form. All right, I'm going to select all, delete, and then paste. And then we'll do one last check, make sure everything's correct. So version number, services, application name. One thing about this is that when you're naming your application services, you cannot use any dashes or underscores. It will error out. Okay. This looks correct. All right, that looks good. You don't need any of these comments either, but it won't break. And then we're done. Let's hit save. Okay, so at this point, we have completed all the steps to submit to NodeApps Marketplace. And let me show you what that looks like. So if I click into my template now, there's a few things I can do with it. I can deploy a preview and get a template URL. When you're submitting to the hackathon, you're going to need the template URL. This is a requirement to submit. So let me show you what that looks like. This is my template URL right here. You can copy and paste this and then go into the hackathon. That's the URL we need from you, because that's going to lead us directly to your application. And from here, there's a few things you can do. Deploy a preview. Let's see if your YAML even worked. You can see over here, here's the overview that we created together. These are my use cases. Oh, I should make this prettier. And here's my YAML. And to see if this is working, you can deploy a preview with this button here. So if I click on it, I have 1 of 20 chances. I clicked on it, and now I can set my resources. So by default, we passed in 200 and 400. You can also make these number higher if you want, but there's no need for me to do that. So I'm going to click Deploy Preview. These preview links are just for developers to check if their Docker image is deploying correctly. And it also generates a URL that is like shareable for about 10 minutes. So there, my application is deployed. I can click into it. And here I can see some logs. And with this button over here, endpoints, I can go straight to my template. So voila, this URL is viable for about 10 minutes. You can share it. You have enough time to test out your application, see if the whole thing is working. If you don't have enough time, you can deploy it again. So as I said, only the owner can deploy this. Okay. Take a walk. That all works. So let's finish up this stream really quickly. If you need a sample application, it is still on the top left, and it will take you directly to this build here. And I think that's all we need for you to win the hackathon. If you guys have any questions, anything at all, like leave us a comment in the chat, whether you're seeing this live or not. We're still going to see your messages. And let me summarize. So let's close this out. Going back to the top, video format is very important. It is a demonstration of you using your application and talking through it. Basically, it's an educational demo. And this is very, very important, as well as like how you submit your docs. It has to be thorough and well written. We find that a lot of developers don't kind of skip the step, focus more on the build. But I think the documentation is the other most important part, because when you want an application to be useful, you must be able to communicate how to use it and what it's used for. Then the number one pitfall that developers get into is forgetting to build their Docker image for AMD 64. To build for AMD 64, you just make sure you use this tag. And I think that's all we need. These are all the steps you need to build a Docker image locally, to publish it, publicly, and also to submit it to NodeOps Marketplace. With these requirements met, you have a very strong chance of winning a hackathon. So if you're building anything cool, come talk to us. We're happy to meet you. Good luck on the hackathon. And yeah, we'll see you next time. All right. Nice to meet you, everybody. Leave a message, say hi,